Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about 1 and 2-step inequalities, how to solve them, some important information when solving them, and then how to graph them. I do want to say that I'm going to be jumping around a little bit, so make sure that whatever slide I start with, you find it on your PowerPoint and keep following along with me. All right, so something that you must remember when you are solving inequalities, so you'll solve an inequality just like you would solve an equation, but if at any time you multiply or divide both sides by a negative, then you are going to flip your sign, flip your inequality sign. So, for instance, if I had like negative 2x is greater than 4. To solve this, like an equation, I would have to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. And since I divided both sides by negative 2, my answer is yes, x is now less than negative 2. Okay, so you would flip your sign. It's facing one way in the first problem, and since you divided by a negative, it will flip the other way. Nope. All right, so also when you are going to graph, a couple things you need to remember. So first of all, this first sign that is written up here, that is your less than sign. And when you are graphing a less than sign, you always want to use an open circle. The next symbol down is a greater than sign. And when you graph that, again, you always use an open circle. And so for less than or greater than, you're using an open circle because you're not including the number that you are circling or that you're plotting. For the bottom two, this would be a less than or equal to sign. And since it can be equal to, you are going to be using a closed circle when you graph those, because it also can include the number that you're graphing. And then the bottom one, that's a greater than or equal to the sign. And again, you're going to use closed circle. And that's because, again, it includes the number that you are graphing. So anytime you have an equal to or equal to part, you will have a closed circle, and then if you just have a less than or greater than sign, you will use an open circle. All right, so now we're going to solve and then graph each solution on the number. All right, let's take a look at this first problem. It says s plus 1 is less than or equal to 10. All right, so you're going to draw your line down your inequality sign just like if it was an equal sign. And right now we have s, and there's a 1 that's being added to it, so we want to get rid of that. So we're going to subtract 1 on both sides to solve. And we're left with, on our left-hand side, s is less than or equal to, and then 10 minus 1 is 9. So I now have s is less than or equal to 9. What I need to do is graph that. So what I like to do is start with the number that I'm looking at, which is 9. Put that in the middle. It's going to be this tuck mark. Then I'm going to do one number greater, so 10, and then one number smaller, 8. You're going to put your circle over the 9. This is going to be a closed circle because it is less than or equal to 9. So since s is less than or equal to 9, I'm going to shade in the direction of all the numbers that are less than or equal to 9. So that would be towards the left. Now, another way that you can do this, a little trick you can use, as long as your variable is on your right-hand side and your number is on your left-hand side, a trick you can use is you can make that inequality sign into a little arrow, and it'll show you which way your arrow should be pointing, which is towards the left. So we did this right, and we used a closed dot. All right, for this one, same thing. We're going to go ahead and draw our line down our inequality sign, just like if it was an equal sign. And if I look, remember we used to talk about, or we've talked about simplifying this on the left-hand side by doing keep, change first. So that would really be d plus a positive 5 is greater than negative 7. It makes it just a little bit easier to look at, and now I can solve. by subtracting 5 on both sides. And that leaves me with D is greater than, and then negative 7 minus 5, keep change, is negative 12. And I'm done. Now I want to take note, in both of these problems that we've done, we have not multiplied or divided by a negative number, so we're not having to flip our signs at all, which is great. So now we're just going to plot D is greater than or equal to negative 12. So I'm going to pick a line in the middle. This is going to be my negative 12. I'm going to do one number greater, which would be negative 11, and one number smaller, which would be negative 13. I'm going to put my circle over my 12, and it is going to be an open circle because it is just greater than, and we are going to shade in the direction of all the numbers that are greater than negative 12. Again, you could use a little trick if you wanted to, make this into an arrow, and it shows us that we should be shading to the right. All right, this one here, 12C is greater than negative 240. So I'm going to draw my line down my sign. All right, as I can see here, my C is being multiplied by 12, so I am going to divide both sides by 12 to get rid of that. And that'll leave me with C is greater than, and then I need to do some division here. So 240, how many times does 12 go into 240? Well, it can't go into 2, it can go into 24 2 times. Okay, bring down my 0, and then 12 can't go into 0. So we get C is negative 20. Okay, now I have to be careful here. I did divide both sides by something, but I did not divide it by a negative. Even though my answer was negative, I divided by a positive 12. So therefore, I'm going to keep my sign the same, and my answer is C is greater than negative 20. So I'm going to go ahead and plot my negative 20. I'm going to do one number that's greater, so negative 19, and one number that's smaller, 21. I'm going to put my circle, and it is going to be an open circle, and I'm going, since C is any number that is greater than negative 20, I'm going to shade in the direction of greater than negative 20, or again, use your little arrow trick. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this problem. This is a two-step problem, still going to be solving it the exact same way we've been doing it. So we're going to start by drawing our line down our equal sign, or our inequality sign. First step here would be, yes, to subtract both sides by 6 and 1/10. So subtract by 6 and 1/10. Okay, I am going to have to add a decimal and a 0, and I need to borrow here. So this, because I have to subtract, so this becomes a 10, this becomes a 4, this becomes a 14, and a 1. So 10 minus 1 is 9. 14 minus 6 is 8, and then 1 minus nothing is 1. I'm going to keep my sign, which is greater than or equal to, and then I still have a negative 9x on my left-hand side. Okay, so if I look here to solve, I am going to have to divide by a negative 9. Negative 9. So you can see very clearly here, to get my answer, I am dividing by a negative. So I know that my sign is going to have to flip. So it's going to go from a greater than or equal to sign to now a less than or equal to sign. I'm going to have an x on my left-hand side because those 9s are going to cancel out. And then I just need to figure out how many times negative 9 goes into 18.9. So 9 goes into 18 2 times. Bring down my 9, and then 9 goes into 9 one time. So I get 2 and 1/10, and it is negative. So biggest thing here was to make sure my sign is flipped, and that is going to be the answer that I'm going to now graph. So I'm going to start here, and I've got a negative 2 and 1/10. I'm going to do one more that's greater, which would be negative 2.0, which is just negative 2, and one number smaller, which would be negative 2.2. I'm going to use a closed circle, and it says x is less than or equal to negative 2 and 1/10. So I'm going to shade in the direction of all the numbers that are less than or equal to 2 and 1/10, or again, got your arrow trick. All right, this next one we've got 20 is less than 2 parentheses, negative 6 and 4/10 plus 4x, close parentheses. So right off the bat, I can already tell my expression is written backwards, or my equation inequality is written backwards because I've got my variable on the right-hand side. So I think the first thing you should do is go ahead and rewrite this. So we're going to write everything that's on the right-hand side to the left. So 2 parentheses, negative 6 and 4/10 plus 4x. And then on the other side, we're just going to have our 20. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. Wherever your sign was facing before, so see how it's eating the side with the 2 in the parentheses, you need to make sure that when you rewrite it, you flip your sign so that it's still facing the same way. And the mouth of the inequality is facing away from the 20. So when you rewrite it, make sure that you do it correctly. Now we're just going to solve like we have been doing. It's super important that you rewrite it so that it makes graphing a little bit easier to do. So first, when I draw my line down my equal sign, or my inequality sign, I do need to start off by distributing here into my parentheses. So I need to do 2 times negative 6.4. So why don't you pause the video, calculate that, and come back and see what you get when you distribute. All right, so we should have gotten negative 12.8 plus 8x is greater than 20. Okay, so now I'm going to solve like normal. I need to add 12.8 over here to get rid of it. So I'm going to add 12.8 over here. That's going to leave me with, my 12.8s are gone, 8x is less than, I'm going to add my 0, so I get 8, 2, 3. So I'm going to scoot that down a little bit. All right, and then the last thing I need to do here is divide by 8, divide by 8. So x is going to be still greater than, and then we need to figure out our math here. We're not having to flip our sign because we're dividing by a positive. So I'm going to do my division, come back and check your work. All right, so we should have gotten x is, and that is greater than 4.1, and it should be positive. So now I'm going to graph. I'm going to scoot it over just a little because I've got my math on it. So 4.1, I'm going to do one number that is greater, so 4.2. And one number smaller, which is just 4. I should have, let me switch colors, an open circle, and I'm going to shade in the direction of everything that's greater than 4 and 1/10.